So now that we're displaying the buttons correctly in our user interface, let's now add the functionality for these. And we'll first of all start in our agent.ts file. And let's just close the other tabs down. It's getting quite busy at the top. And inside here, what we're going to do is just add the new method that we need inside our activities object. And what we'll do, and in fact, I've just noticed here, I'm using request.get for these ones and axios.post. We're not actually doing anything with the response from these, so it doesn't really matter. But just for consistency, I'm going to change these to requests and requests and requests. And in this case, it's DEL. I'll have added a call out to the earlier lesson about this, so yours should already be correct. But like I say, it doesn't really matter. So anyway, we're going to add a new method in here called attend. And this is going to take the ID of the activity, which of course is a string. And we're going to say requests.post. And we're not returning anything from this, so it's going to be void. And then we'll say backticks /activities $, and then the ID of the activity /attend to match the endpoint we created. And we're just going to send up an empty object for this request. And then we'll go to our activity store to make use of this. And let's scroll down to the bottom here. And what we'll do is we'll just add a method called update attendance. And this is going to act as a toggle effectively. And we'll make it an async method. And what we're going to need to do is go and get our user object from our user store. So we'll say const user equals store.userstore.user. And what we'll also do is set our loading flag equal to true. And then what we'll do, we'll add a try catch block and pass in the error. And we'll just console.log any error. And what we'll also do in this one is we'll add a finally block. And in the finally block, then we're going to run in action. And we're going to turn off our loading flag. So we'll say list.loading equals false. So whatever happens, if we get an error or we get success, then we're always going to turn off that loading flag that we set up here. So the first thing we'll do is we'll attempt to update our API. So we'll say await agent activities dot attend, and then we need to pass in list.selectedActivity.id. Now our selected activity is set as an activity or it's undefined. And we're going to get around this just by using the bang operator again. We're going to override the default behavior here because we know if a user is trying to update their attendance, then they're inside an activity. It's the only place they're going to be allowed to do this. If they're inside an activity, then this is going to be populated with the activity left selected. And then what we'll do is we'll create a run-in action. And inside here, we're going to set some properties depending on whether the user is already going or is not going to the activity. So we'll add an if statement and we'll say if this.selectedActivity is going, and we'll leave the optional chaining in there that VS Code has kindly filled out for us. And then we'll say list.selectedActivity.attendees equals this.selectedActivity.attendees, and we're going to filter to remove the currently logged in user from this. And we'll say A goes to a.username that's not equal to user.username. So it's effectively going to filter out the currently logged in user from the attendees array. And let's try and move this down so we see it all on the same screen. And then what we'll do is we'll say list.selectedActivity.isGoing, and we're going to set that equal to false. And then we'll add an else condition, because if they don't hit this method, then they're not going to be going. And what we'll do is we'll need to create a new profile for this particular user. And what we'll do, just to make this easy for us, let's go to our profile interface. And we'll create a class so that in the constructor of the class, we can automatically set the properties based on the currently logged in user. So we'll say export class, and we'll say profile implements the profile. looks a bit weird because we're using the same name for both of these. And our class can be used as a type as well as our profile, but it's not going to cause us any problems or confusion. So what we'll do is we'll add a constructor and we'll take in a user object of type user. And make sure that we bring in user into this interface as well, or TypeScript file. And what we'll do is we'll say list.username equals user.username. We'll say list.displayname equals user.displayname. And we'll say list.image equals user.image. Now we don't have a bio in our user object, so we're not going to complete this when we create a new profile for what we're doing here. We're only interested in creating an attendee object based on the information we have for this particular user at this moment. And then we can go back to our activity store. And what we'll do, we'll say const attendee equals new profile. And we'll pass in our user object. And of course, our user could technically be null. It's not going to be null. So what we'll do is we'll just add the bang operator onto lists. And then we'll say list.selectedActivity.attendees.push. And we'll pass in the attendee. And then we'll say list.selectedActivity.isGoing equals true. And at this stage, we get another warning, tell us that the left-hand side of an assignment expression may not be an optional property access, so we need to use the bang operator here as well to remove that particular error. And below the if-else statement, whatever we're doing, we're going to set the activity registry with the updated activity. So we're going to say list.activityregistry.set, and then we'll say list.selectedActivity.id, and then we'll pass in list.selectedActivity. And once again, we'll need to swap the optional chaining for the bang operator, and we'll need to do the same with list.selectedActivity. So this is the method we need to update the attendance for a user. We're going to remove the attendee object if they're cancelling their place, and we're going to add an attendee object if they're joining an activity. And then we're going to take the opportunity to set our activity registry at the same time. So what we need to do then is go across to our activity detailed header, and we need to bring in our activity store into this component as well. So we'll say const activity store equals use store. And what we'll do, we'll just destructure further inside here just the things we're interested in. So we'll add a colon and curly brackets, and we'd say update attendance we want to bring in here, and we also want to bring in our loading flag as well. And let's scroll on down to the buttons, and what we'll do is we'll add an on click and set this to update attendance. We don't need any parameters in here, so we can just add this in directly, and we'll do the same for the join activity. Now we could do all this in a single button and use conditionals to display different text, etc. But because I've already got these buttons here, the lazier option in this case is just to add the on-click events. So that's what I've done. And what we should be able to do now is obviously go test. So let's take a look and refresh the page. And I'm on an activity, future activity 1, that Bob is not currently going to. And if I click on join activity, then we see that Bob is now added. And if I click on cancel, then Bob disappears. But I didn't see the loading flag because I forgot to add it to the button. So let's do that, and we'll say loading equals loading. And we'll do the same for the cancel. And we'll go back and retest this. Let's just refresh the page once again. And I'll join the activity. We see the loading indicator. Bob appears on the list. I'll cancel attendance. Bob disappears from the list. If we go to our activities, then we should also see the same on this as well. So I'll click on view, click on join, and go back to the activities. And we can see that Bob is going to this activity. We see the attendee in there as well. So we're looking good. The next thing we're going to take a look at, because they will be broken if we try and create or edit an activity at this point, is take a look at what we need to do to refactor those methods to accommodate our attendees.